Welcome and thank you so much for coming. My name is Dr. Amanda Zavitz and I'm the organizer of the Social Science Speakers Series. Today I have the incredible pleasure of introducing one of Fanshawe College's best professors, Lorraine McNeil. Professor Lorraine McNeil has been teaching Anthropology and Sociology at Fanshawe College for 25 years. Outside of teaching at Fanshawe, Lorraine is a passionate activist for peace, justice, and social solidarity. She's involved primarily with Latin American Canadian Solidarity Association, the London Committee in support of the Cuban Five and People for Peace. She also supports several ape-related organizations, as well as the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. In her talk today, Professor McNeil will discuss the relevance and importance of social justice. We are continually reminded of how little justice there seems to be in the world today, and how desperately we require more of it. We don't talk nearly enough, or often enough, about justice, especially for non-humans. But non-humans need and deserve as much justice and equality as humans. We will scrutinize this perspective through the lens of our closest relatives, the bonobos. What is a bonobo? Why are they lacking justice? And why should we care? And why is justice for bonobos intertwined with justice for human beings as well? I'm thrilled to announce and give you your professor, my colleague and friend, Lorraine McNeil.
Good afternoon. Happy Valentine's Day. I want to thank you all so much for coming today, my current students, my former students, other people's students, and my friends and colleagues. I'm so happy to see you here today. And I also want to thank Amanda Zavitz for that wonderful introduction, and also for organizing the Social Science Speakers Series. Without her enthusiasm and her conviction that I could pull this off, I wouldn't be here today. I also want to thank 4 incredible people without whose passion for bonobos this presentation would not have been possible. Vanessa Woods, the author of Bonobo Handshake. Claudine André, the founder of Lola, Ya Bonobo, the world's only sanctuary for bonobos. Franz de Waal, the author of Bonobo, the Forgotten Ape. And Takayoshi Kano, who introduced the world outside of Africa to the amazing world of the bonobo. Without the love, dedication, and commitment of these 4 people to the bonobos of the world, there would be a lot fewer bonobos in the world, and we would know even less about them than we do today. When I first heard that the theme for the Social Science Speaker Series this year was social science in practice, one word immediately came to my mind: justice. As a social scientist, my perspective has always been that the most important purpose of social science research should be to increase the amount of justice there is in the world, to make the world a more just place. I talk about justice endlessly in all of my classes. Just ask any of my students. Or ask my friends and colleagues how I respond if they make the mistake of showing up in the office with coffee that isn't fair trade. Or ask them about the lecture they get if they make the mistake of calling a chimpanzee a monkey. We talk about many kinds of justice these days. Social justice, justice for indigenous people, environmental justice. There are so many who are undeservedly disadvantaged in the world. But there are also so many with a vision that a better world is possible, working from the local level to the global, to try to address the structural injustices and inequalities that afflict our world today. But as much as we talk about environmental justice, we rarely actually narrow that down to examine or articulate what exactly justice would mean for all those specific non-human species who actually live in the environments that we want to bring justice to. Except for maybe whales, but that would be another presentation. So today I want to push that justice envelope just a bit and talk about expanding our concept of justice to include justice for our closest living relatives. But this is Valentine's Day, so I have an ulterior motive. I also hope that you will fall in love today, just maybe not in the way you might expect.
Oh, that is cute.
This is a bonobo. It is our closest living relative. It is not a chimpanzee, and in fact, it is more closely related to us genetically than even chimpanzees are, about 99%. Today, I hope that you will fall in love with bonobos and join me in the journey to bring justice to their lives. But before I tell you about bonobos, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. This is their Christmas message, but I believe it works at any time. That should be down here. Yeah. People of Wamba in the Congo Basin of the Democratic Republic of Congo have many tales. The one I would like to share with you today is called Why Bonobo Lives in the Forest. A long time ago, bonobo and people lived together in the village. They worked and played together. The bonobo was no different from the people. Back then, everybody was naked. One day, a lifaka, or raffia palm, came into the village. As a charm, it knitted a bekua, or cloth, from its own husk. The village elders were very happy and gave everyone in the village a piece of the cloth. At this time, the bonobo was away in the forest. When he returned, the village had changed. All the men and women covered their front with a piece of cloth. Now, just the bonobo walked around as he was created, or naked. He ran to the village elder and said, "Give me a bekua too." "Are you a bonobo?" the elder asked. "Where have you been?" "I was in the forest," the bonobo replied. The elder shook his head and said, "We entirely forgot about you. The cloth has all been divided up among the people, and there isn't a piece left." "All right then," said the bonobo. "I'll be naked like all the animals." Then he shouted, "I wouldn't live naked in the village even if I died. I'll go into the forest and eat fruit and sprouts and never come to the village again." The people who live among bonobos have always recognized as bonobos as our relatives from our distant past. They have always respected them and had taboos against killing them. There, the people say, "Salisa bonobo, empe bonobo aka solisa yo." Help the bonobo, and the bonobo will help you. Today, more than ever, the bonobo needs our help. And maybe, if we open our minds and our hearts, they can help us heal our war-torn world. So, just what is a bonobo and why should you care? First, a bonobo is not a monkey. A bonobo is an ape. Monkeys and apes are totally different, not even close. So, how can we tell an ape from a monkey?
Monkeys have tails.
All monkeys have tails. No apes have tails. It's the easiest way to tell a monkey from an ape. Look for a tail. If there's no tail, it's an ape. But that's not the most important difference. What's the most important difference?
Brain development.
Brain development. Apes have bigger brains, much bigger brains. That's the most important difference between a monkey and an ape, is our brains. A bonobo is also not the same as a chimpanzee, even though they were confused by Westerners and zoo operators for a very long time, at least until 1933, and in some places even longer. When you know what a bonobo looks like, you will never again mistake one for the other. So, what's so special about a bonobo? Everything. Bonobos, as you can see in the photo, have darker skin than chimpanzees, with bright red lips that suggest that they've just been applying lipstick, and a beautiful part in the center of their long, silky hair. Their faces are flatter, and their foreheads are higher. They look more like us. Their legs are longer than a chimp's, and they seem more graceful. You can't tell from the picture, but their voices are higher pitched than chimps as well. A bonobo's pelvis is more like ours, so they walk upright more easily than chimps and more often. And when they smile, they use the exact same facial muscles that we do. The family resemblance is pretty clear, isn't it? Paul Raphael, writing for the Smithsonian Institute, notes that when he first saw bonobos, he found that, quote, "They look strangely human with their upright bipedal gait, long slim arms and legs, slender neck, and a body whose proportions resemble ours more than they do a chimp's." Bonobo females look more like us as well. Their breasts are virtually identical to ours, and their genitals are in front, like ours, rather than in behind, like a chimpanzee's. That means that sex is much more likely to be face-to-face than it is in any other non-human ape. We'll come back to sex in a few minutes. The intelligence of bonobos is astonishing. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of windows into their capacity in their natural environment. But we do know that they have an elaborate system of gestural communication, one which we haven't cracked, and that they are much more vocal with each other than the quiet chimpanzees are. But most of what we have learned from bonobos comes from those in captivity, as controversial as that whole subject is. For instance, when provided with different kinds of stone, and without prompting, bonobos make stone tools that are virtually identical to the stone tools our ancestors made 2 million years ago. The world's most famous bonobo is a fellow named Kanzi. Kanzi lives at the Great Ape Trust in Des Moines, Iowa. Now, the Great Ape Trust is mired in incredible controversy. that to me is one more piece of evidence that bonobos belong in Africa, not Iowa. But none of that controversy is Kanzi's fault. Kanzi is still pretty amazing. Kanzi burst into fame when, as a toddler, he showed that he understood and could communicate with humans using lexicograms. He wasn't even the intended subject. His mother was. Lexicograms are a special kind of keyboard with symbols for words. Kanzi's vocabulary includes several hundred lexicograms. He also speaks some American Sign Language that he learned from watching videos of Coco the gorilla signing. At least one anthropologist, Dawn Prince Hughes, believes that Kanzi and other bonobos can actually speak English. We just can't understand their accent because their vocal tracts are so different that they are unable to make most of the sounds that we can. But apparently other bonobos can. It appears likely that whenever Kanzi communicates with lexicograms, he says the words vocally at the same time, but in his high-pitched bonobo voice. Because we can't understand him easily, for many years those vocalizations were ignored. Once, on a walk in the woods, Kanzi was given matches and marshmallows. He proceeded to create a fire and then got a long twig, stripped the leaves off it, and roasted marshmallows. Excuse me. But what is especially amazing about bonobos is their social life. Primatologists, reflecting the anti-Vietnam War era that many of us grew up in, call bonobos the make love, not war ape. Bonobos almost never fight. They don't kill one another. They get along. They live in peace and harmony. They have been described as living a sociable life in a peaceful community. How do they do that? What's their secret? Well, one thing I find particularly cool about bonobos is that the females are in charge. Not an aggressive, my way or the highway kind of in charge. More like they are the most respected members of the community, and they get to set the tone. And what female bonobos want is a community of peace and harmony. After all, that's the safest environment in which to raise children. And by and large, female bonobos get what they want. Some people have described bonobo society as female-dominated, but I don't think that quite grasps it. I think it's really much more egalitarian than that. Well, how they do that, how they manage this life, is actually quite complicated. But of course, some of it has to do with sex. Bonobos have a lot of sex. For many people, that's all they know about bonobos. It's true. Bonobos really do have a lot of sex. When bonobos have a conflict, a dispute, a disagreement, tension, they have sex. And then they're friends. Sex is the most significant method of conflict resolution used by bonobos. Sex is also used to calm themselves if they're anxious or frightened. It works. That's not to say they don't have any rules. You don't have sex with your relatives. Adults don't have sex with young children. Sound familiar? Most other apes only have sex when a female is fertile. That makes for a pretty lousy sex life most of the time. Bonobos are different. Bonobo females are happy to have sex at any time. That affects male bonobos too. Chimp males are always competing with one another, even with their friends, to get access to the ladies. Bonobo males don't have to worry about eager females being in short supply. Finding one, or two, or three is never a problem. That's why bonobo males are happy to take the lead from bonobo females and live sociably together. No need to compete with one another or strut their stuff to impress the girls. Bonobos, as I said, and as you can see, also have sex face-to-face much of the time. Chimps can't because of their anatomy. Bonobos, on the other hand, can and do gaze lovingly into their partner's eyes. Not a bad image for Valentine's Day. But if bonobos knew how repressed we humans often are about sexuality and how many rules we create to stand in the way of enjoying one another, they'd probably shake their heads and say, life's about being social together, enjoying one another, not always fighting and competing. By our standards, pretty much every bonobo is bisexual. While male-female coupling is the most common, female-to-female is a close second, the now famous Gigi rubbing, and male-to-male isn't too far behind. Bonobos have figured out something important about sex. It isn't just about reproduction. It isn't even just about maintaining social harmony. It's fun! Why limit yourself to one gender when you can double your pleasure? Contrary to popular belief, bonobos don't spend every waking minute having sex. They also groom one another, socialize with one another, and eat, mostly fruit, by the way. Mothers provide devoted and exquisite care for their babies, nursing them for up to 5 years. Males are affectionate with children as well. They do all of this peacefully, deeply enjoying each other's company. Occasionally, different communities of bonobos get together and mingle. They naturally have sex together, but the kids also play together, the adults groom one another, possibly converse, and they may even travel together, together. This never happens with any other ape, and is one of the most amazing and not well understood aspects of bonobos' unique life. Now, I'm not saying we could solve all the violence and wars of the world if we just had sex several times a day. But think of this. A bonobo's brain is about 1/3 the size of our brain. Yet they figured out how to live happily in peace and harmony. What are we doing with our allegedly superior intelligence that they've got this figured out and we are so very far from it? The few people who have heard of bonobos usually immediately think sex when they think of them. I get that, but bonobos are about so much more than sex. Bonobos are amazing in so many ways. Apes rarely share food beyond mothers and their children. Bonobos do so happily. They lounge and they like to take their time while they're eating. They prefer to eat with company and they readily share. When Vanessa Woods and her husband Brian Hare tried to determine if bonobos living in the Lola bonobo sanctuary would cooperate in order to get food, it turned into a study to determine if there were any circumstances under which they wouldn't cooperate to get food. As it turns out, there was only one. A female in labor wasn't especially cooperative. In fact, bonobos are just as likely to cooperate with strangers than with those they know. And when given a choice between having a meal all to themselves and admitting another bonobo to an area they were in order to share their food, they let the other bonobo in first so that they could make sure they could share their food. That goes beyond just wanting everyone to get along. This is a characteristic we used to think only we were capable of: altruism. Bonobos, we know, are more sensitive than chimps. Their social and emotional intelligence seems to be off the scale, at least for anything we associate with non-humans. They show signs of empathy. The ability of bonobos to discern what another individual is feeling, human or bonobo, is extraordinary. There aren't a lot of bonobos in zoos, but there are a few. The San Diego Zoo is one. One time, some juvenile bonobos were playing in an empty moat in their enclosure. Now, bonobos can't swim. No non-human apes can swim. They don't have the body mass to be able to stay afloat in water. If they get into water over their head, they immediately sink like stones and drown. The purpose of the moat was to ensure that the bonobos didn't escape, because the apes know this and they avoid water over their head. A caretaker hadn't noticed the youngsters playing in the empty moat and went to turn on the water to fill it up. All of a sudden, he saw Cucullin, the old male of the group, waving and screaming at him to get his attention. Cucullin directed his attention to the children in the moat that the caretaker hadn't been able to see, and they were rescued before any drowned. That's what we usually call empathy, or the ability to take the perspective of another. This ability isn't limited to their own friends, or even to their own species. One time in a zoo in England, a little starling flew and it hit the glass surrounding a bonobo enclosure, and it was stunned. A bonobo gently picked her up, carried her to the top of the highest tree in the enclosure, wrapped her legs carefully around the tree to support herself, and gently with both hands let the little starling go. The bonobo had the capacity to put itself in the bird's perspective, to show its compassion, and to sense what the little bird needed. Aren't bonobos incredible? Aren't you intrigued to learn more about them, to expand our understanding of their qualities and their abilities? Now, imagine a world without bonobos. Imagine a forest where no bonobos will ever gather again. Or a mine where there used to be a forest. Is that the world you want? Or is the world better with bonobos and their forests in it? There are not many bonobos. They only live in one country, the Democratic Republic of Congo in Central Africa. And here you see the bonobo range. We don't really know how many bonobos there are. Most estimates put their numbers at possibly as low as 5,000 to 10,000. That's not even half the student population of Fanshawe College. The very best, probably really overly optimistic estimates say there could possibly be 50,000. Imagine the Sky Dome full to capacity. That's the most optimistic estimate of all the bonobos there are in the world. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature includes the bonobos as an endangered species. Some, including me, fear we may have passed that point, and they are now critically endangered, the most serious level a species can be at without being extinct. There were never a lot of bonobos. But they weren't always endangered. That's new. And it's 100% humans' fault. The DRC has been embroiled in conflict since 1998. The civil war there, that officially ended in 2003, still goes on in reality. Bonobos aren't the only ones to suffer in this conflict. As many as 7 million people have died in this conflict. This appalling, devastating war that almost never makes it into our news. The DRC has the horrifying nickname of the rape capital of the world. The president of the International Red Cross described the situation in the DRC as a humanitarian catastrophe of horrid and shocking proportion. Where do bonobos, along with gorillas, chimpanzees, and non-primates like elephants, who have the very bad luck to possess tusks made of ivory, where do they fit into this human catastrophe? Profit. Stripped to its bare bones, this war, like so many wars, is about the quest for profit. The DRC, the country the UN has declared to be the least livable country in the world, is blessed with resources. The war is a massively complex phenomenon. In some ways, it's a continuation of the Rwandan genocide of 1994. It never really ended, it just crossed the border. Some of those who committed atrocities in Rwanda fled to the DRC, where they continue in the same sorts of atrocities in the DRC. Rwanda chases them across the border, but doesn't then limit itself to searching for criminals. Actually, much of what people are actually killing one another for are the resources of the DRC. Three in particular come to mind: gold, diamonds, and coltan. This is coltan. Coltan, short for columbite tantalum, is used in the development of heat-resistant capacitors, required to conduct electrical charges in high-tech electronic equipment. It is in every single electronic device that needs to be protected from overheating, from our cell phones to our laptops to digital cameras to Xboxes. Most of the world's coltan comes from Rwanda. But wait, Rwanda has no coltan. All of Rwanda's coltan is acquired illegally in the DRC. So are all of Rwanda's diamonds, their second largest export. And along with destroying magnificent rainforest and everything in it, Rwandans kill Congolese. Congolese kill Rwandans. The same exact story happens with Uganda, claiming to cross the border in pursuit of the Lord's Resistance Army, but at the same time helping themselves to Congolese gold. And lots of Congolese kill other Congolese as well. Over 7 million people dead in 15 years. And let's not forget, those weapons come from someplace. The business of war is exceptionally profitable for arms dealers as well. When people are marauding or running for their lives, they will eat anything they can get, including bonobos. They may not even know what they are, or that historically people never saw them as food. There is evidence that the vast majority of bonobos that get eaten are eaten by soldiers. DRC government soldiers, rebel soldiers within the DRC, Rwandan soldiers, Ugandan soldiers. All are equally culpable in this savage atrocity. And then there is the bushmeat industry. It is illegal in every country in the world to kill apes. It is illegal to eat apes. It still happens. The bushmeat industry is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry based on the killing and marketing of food from the bush. This includes, most often, animals that were never historically seen as food. Clever marketing campaigns by profitable corporations, often the same logging corporations who are busy destroying the rainforests, convince people otherwise and present bushmeat as the answer to the problems of poverty and hunger that plague sub-Saharan Africa. Thousands of bonobos, chimpanzees, and gorillas are murdered every year. In pure economic terms, this is of course unsustainable. When the apes are gone, they will be gone. The corporations will simply move on. The babies, with too little meat on them to make a viable meal, are sold into a lucrative and also illegal pet trade. If they are really, really lucky, they live and get confiscated and brought to Lola ya bonobo, paradise for bonobos in the Lingala language, the world's only sanctuary for bonobos, where they are loved and cared for under the direction of the amazing Claudine Andre. where maybe, if they can survive their grief and trauma, because many can't, they get a second chance. Claudine founded Les Amis des Bonobos du Congo in 1994. ABC for short, we know it in English as Friends of Bonobos. Since 2002, she has managed the sanctuary, located just outside of the DRC's capital, Kinshasa. The government donated the land appropriated from the former notorious dictator, Mobutu Sese Seko. The bonobos there, generally between 50 to 60 of them, all rescued from the pet trade, are safe in their 30-hectare forest paradise. Claudine André, an expat from France who moved to the Congo when she was 3 years old and has never left, is married to a Congolese man, has a Congolese family. A woman famous and revered in both France and Belgium, yet virtually unknown in the English-speaking world. Vanessa Wood says, "If I were an angel, I would paint the sky the color of her eyes." She and her team of Congolese mamas, a term of respect, by the way, for any girl or woman past the age of puberty, give of themselves generously and unceasingly to the emotionally and physically damaged and fragile bonobos who end up in their care. And now, hope. Hope for a new beginning. The Po people of Basankusu in the DRC have taken on the job of protector of newly released into the wild bonobos from Lola bonobo. 9 were released on June 14th, 2009, in strict accordance with the guidelines set by the International Union of the Conservation of Nature, to make sure they get it right. They now live in Ekolo ya Bonobo, the land of the bonobos. 6 more recently joined them. ABC has, in return for the villagers' commitment to protecting the bonobos, provided them with school materials for 7 schools, 1,000 students. A woman's health clinic, so desperately needed for women, particularly during pregnancy and in childbirth. A pharmacy, and a winning soccer team, the Basankusu Bonobos. Because, as bonobos show us, life has to have joy in it. In return, Vanessa Woods tells us, the bonobos will share their secrets. School children learn that when bonobos get angry, they hug. Women hear that together, bonobo females are strong. Men understand that it is possible to live a life without war. The people of Basankusu, she goes on to say, have something more precious than diamonds or gold or coltan. They have something no one can steal, something that will cause neither war nor bloodshed. This treasure remains a glimmer of hope, an outline of night through the trees. The people of the DRC need many things. More than anything else, they need peace. They also need hope, justice, gender equality, food security and sovereignty, clean water and sanitation, access to health care, education. They do not, now or ever, need bonobo or any other ape meat. So what can you do, a student or a teacher in London, Ontario, to avoid feeling overwhelmed by one more injustice, one more tragedy unfolding? How can you replace despair with empowerment? Start small, like Friends of Bonobos on Facebook. And I actually messaged them and told them I was hoping they would get quite a few more likes after today. Keep learning about bonobos and about the DRC. Oops. Educate yourself and your family and your friends. Buy cool bonobo t-shirts or other merchandise. These sales help support Lola Ya Bonobo. Buy Bonobo Handshake. It's an amazing book. Vanessa Wood's book. 10% of the profits go to the sanctuary. When you buy a new cell phone, find an organization that recycles old ones. That helps to reduce the market for new coltan. If you can afford it, maybe as a group or with your family, adopt a bonobo. It's only $20 a month, $240 for a year. Every bonobo in the sanctuary costs $300 a month to care for, so donations are the key to their survival. Get involved, either with a grassroots organization or in the political process. Challenge our government's refusal to put any limits or controls on the behavior of Canadian corporations abroad. Mining corporations are frequently the worst offenders in every possible way you can imagine. Check out organizations like Mining Watch, or the Mining Injustice Solidarity Network, or Rights Action, to learn more and perhaps get involved. Oh, not yet. That's okay. Confront as well the power of the arms industry. And again, our government's financial support for those who make a profit from the manufacture of weapons of war. The Canadian Peace Alliance, or ceasefire.ca, would be good starting places. People who know bonobos love them unconditionally and with passion and care that they survive. Frans de Waal says, if we humans do not protect our closest relatives, then we're in really desperate shape. We should certainly protect the forest elephant and all kinds of other animals. But the bonobo and the chimps are very special for our understanding of ourselves and where we came from. We can use them as a sort of time machine to go back in time and look under what kinds of conditions we evolved and how the human mind was shaped by that original environment. The fact that the apes exist and that we can study them is extraordinary and extremely important and makes us reflect on ourselves and our human nature. In that sense alone, you need to protect the apes. Vanessa Woods reminds us that we live in a world of terrible inequality. In which 80% of us live on less than $10 a day, and over 20,000 children die every day from preventable diseases linked to poverty. Over 1 billion of us lack access to clean water. According to her, there have only been 26 days without war since the end of World War II in 1945. Wood says, bonobos, most of the time, bonobos have no hunger, no violence, no poverty. And for all our intelligence, all our things, bonobos have the most important of all, peace. And that is why, she says, bonobos are important. Because they hold the key to a world without war. We have already learned so much from chimpanzees. Yet our other closest relative, the one who has no war and who lives in peace, we have kept at arm's length as strangers. If we lose bonobos, we will never learn their secret. And even more tragically, because they share so much of what makes us human, we will never understand ourselves. Salisa bonobo, mpe bonobo ako salisa yo. Help the bonobo, and the bonobo will help you. Personally, I couldn't agree more. But if I may, I want to add another reason why we must save bonobos. Justice. Bonobos should have the right to be on this earth because they have the right to be on this earth. Period. Bonobos, like humans, deserve justice. we have about 5 minutes if anybody has any questions. It's a little hard to see. I don't think I see any hands. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm wondering how how would a wild bonobo act upon seeing a human or any if you just encounter someone? Would it be would it attack? You said they don't really attack.
They run as far as they can away from us. They're terrified of us.
All right.
They think we look weird, and they just stay away from us. The orphans that are confiscated in the pet trade, they've seen humans, but the only humans they've seen have been brutal to them. So one of the real challenges for the people at Lola bonobo, they've got these babies who've seen their mother killed in front of them, probably other members of the community, because bonobos are never on their own. And they're so traumatized and they're so damaged emotionally and probably physically as well. Some completely lose the will to live. Some are so fearful of humans that they can't imagine trusting a human, because it's humans that they associate with all these terrible things. And so the job of the people in the sanctuary is to find ways to get these little babies to trust them and to retain their will to live. Yeah. Stuart?
I mean, chimpanzees were capable of total use, stripping branches from trees and grabbing.
Right.
You're saying bonobos will actually create some tools. Is that a flint map?
Yeah.
They'll actually map.
Yeah. It hasn't been seen in the wild because they don't have those stones in their natural environment. But in captivity, there have been times that people have given them sort of as enrichment in zoos. And they just quite happily make stone tools and then find something to do with them.
There was the one back there. At the top?
Yes,
I was just wondering what the name of that Facebook group was.
Friends of Bonobos. If you go on the Friends of Bonobos website, that's where I got the video that I showed you at the beginning. There's lots more videos. When I was just loading this up, I saw they've just put up a Valentine's Day video. I haven't had a chance to see it because I just saw it at 5 to 2. But they got great videos about bonobos on their website.
So,
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
no, it's just wondering about the relationships that bonobo parents form. I mean, you know that some primates form, that sort of almost conventional relationships like a mother and father pairing and then a baby. And I'm wondering,
That's kind of interesting. There seems to be evidence that more than in other apes, bonobos form kind of couples. They're usually male-female couples. Unlike our society, they see their emotional connection as not being the same as a sexual one. So you might have an emotional connection with one bonobo and you still have sex with everybody. You both do. And it's not, we understand them so poorly in the wild. And because of the violence in the DRC, it's been really hard to study them. The Japanese researchers who were studying them, when the war broke out, they were ordered out by their government because the government felt it was too unsafe for them. So we just don't know them that well in the wild. But it seems that more than any other non-human ape, they do form these kind of emotional attachments.
So,
Sorry, Anthony, I'm sorry.
I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Lorraine McNeil, a wonderful professor, colleague, and friend, for an absolutely amazing presentation that was both educational and intriguing and informative. And to thank all of you for joining us for this Social Science Speaker Series. And today we have a special guest. My son is almost 4 months old, and I just wanted you to take a look and see.